Africains des pairs.
We get to understand how newsrooms from across the world they are working, how they are dealing with the challenges, and also networking is another important issue. Now I started working on cross-border stories with my colleagues, so definitely it added a lot to me.
The most interesting thing is that I get to learn how to do visual storytelling.
Cette bourse de l'Union africaine nous a permis de renforcer nos capacités dans les nouvelles manières de faire le journalisme. Aujourd'hui, avec le smartphone, nous pouvons filmer, monter et faire diffuser nos sujets, nos reportages.
Donc, filmer, pouvoir monter et pouvoir publier sur le smartphone, c'est quelque chose qu'on n'avait pas avant et je pense que c'était un gros avantage.
Can Continental in class ISO to receive the payment?
Hello everybody, welcome to The Answer Is. I was Peter Beck.
Make online purchases country to country and send remittances.
This country is one of the most spirit.
The city of Nairobi, Kenya is proud to host the 5th Media African Union Coordination Meeting. From the 13th to the 16th of July 2023, the United Nations office in Nairobi, Gigiri, will be abuzz with the continent's brightest minds and leaders. Heads of states and government, foreign ministers, and the African Union Commission, all coming together to accelerate Africa's integration journey. They'll chart the course for a brighter Africa with discussions on continental and regional integration, effective cooperation, and conflict prevention. Amidst the meetings, immerse yourself in Kenya's rich heritage through exciting cultural displays and celebrations. Witness history being made as we unveil the boundless potential of Africa's cinema and creativity. Don't miss the opportunity to explore Nairobi, the beating heart of Africa, where business, culture, and adventure converge. Get ready for an unforgettable journey of unity and progress right here in Nairobi. Welcome to Kenya, where the spirit of Africa shines bright.
As a first step, we launched the Single African Air Transport Market January 2018 as the first project of Agenda 2063 to be launched.
Until a few years ago, almost every time you wanted to fly from one side of Africa to the other, you would have to go via Europe.
This will give a huge opportunity to passengers, but also to the entire continent. As we know, many sectors are really interlinked with civil aviation, but also the business in general.
If air transport were to be liberalized amongst them, an additional 155,000 new jobs will be created. 1.3 billion will be added to the GDPs of the 12 countries, and it would make travel much more easier, cost-effective, and make it competitive.
these issues, particularly e-commerce, the contribution of women and youth to the trade facilitation projects and actions in general. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, such progress cannot hide the constraints, the structural constraint that has impeded our march. I want to point out the difficulties of financing for the implementation of the infrastructure program at the continental level. The deterioration, microphone of the chairperson, phone of the chairperson, microphone of the chairperson. As those who are in charge of progress and fighting against terrorism and violent extremism. The protocol on the free movement of persons and goods cannot be forgotten in this regard. I reiterate my urging the leaders of the economic communities and those that have not yet done so to ratify the protocol. We need to get out of this flagrant contradiction that is to have AfCFTA and also not to have the freedom of movement and goods. The African Union and the regional economic communities are already engaged in the cooperation. In the dynamics of cooperation with the entry into force of the revised protocol, and we should accelerate the pace in order to make it more operational and concrete. The regional economic communities between them, by pooling the various means of designing and implementation of the development projects that will enable them to have a activity scale. In fact, the dynamics, cooperation between the REX will have to be ended between them and also the AfCFTA. In fact, as stipulated in the treaty establishing the various communities, we need to open up and remove the various constraints that are there. In this logic, we should welcome the progress made in the coordination illustrated by examples that is duly carried out on the one hand between the African Union and the regional economic communities, regional mechanisms, and between the REC and the mechanisms themselves. The first example is on the agreement of cessation of hostilities in Ethiopia under the auspices of the African Union and IGAD, and which has inspired the two organizations in the recent adoption of the roadmap on the Sudan. Indeed, the second concerned the initiative of regional community cooperation between ECAS and ECOWAS in maritime security. The third one concerns the effort for resolving the issues and problems in the Great Lakes region. In fact, a quadripartite summit that was convened in Luanda on 7 June between the East African Community, the International Conference on the Great Lakes region, the ECAS and SADC. The fourth one relates to the contribution of AUDA and EPAD to strengthening the infrastructure, the fight against climate change and food security. The fourth one is embedded in the form of exchange of information in real time between the RECs and the mechanisms, the member states and the Commission and Union, as prepared for within the framework of conflict prevention and management. In fact, institutionalize this coordination and to give it a more formal the division of labor between the African Union, the regional economic community, mechanisms, member states, indeed, your agenda, and is being finalized. In fact, a meet that was held last month between the PRC and the Commission was held in Kigali, and they are waiting for the final report in order to enrich the final report that will be presented and then be considered by the regional economic community. In fact, the functional optimum functionality, the coordination should extend its field of action to include such as the financial institutions, the banks, the various research institutions, the UN Economic Commission for Africa, and society and the private sector. In fact, the integration that we are talking about should and be built only by taking into account the geopolitical situations and the economic situations as they are happening in the world, because Africa is suffering the consequences of world governance and the effect of the financial crisis, which is felt by Africa. In fact, Africa should come up with its own African common position, dealing with trade, migration, development financing, and the conflict resolution. Talking of climate change, we have seen the consequences, and President William Ruto, in his capacity as the chairman of the Committee of African Heads of State on climate change, in fact, has been fine-tuning the presentation and defending the interests of Africa. Peace and security in Africa and the world, in fact, is a source of concern for us. We have, in particular, strengthened the leadership that is for the Libyan issue under the leadership of President Sassou Nguesso of the Republic of the Congo, try to convene a national reconciliation conference in order to bring the Libyans together. And I want to recognize the presence of His Excellency Mohammed al-Menfi, who is here in our midst. The Sudanese crisis, which is a very serious thing, should mobilize our efforts with IGAD and others. We need to mobilize humanitarian aid and bring Sudanese themselves in an inclusive dialogue in order to come up with a civilian government that will be able to implement an emergency economic humanitarian security program and as soon as possible. The meeting of the neighboring countries in Peru held 3 days ago at the initiative of His Excellency President Al-Fattah al-Sisi, in which I participated, in fact has strengthened and enhanced the mobilization of Africa in solidarity. In fact, it is crucial we give special attention to the coherence and also the efforts that we are making with the international community in order to ensure the African and orderly African leadership on this African problem, which is very sensitive. Obviously, the situation in the Sahel, particularly with the G5, continue to be of concern. Several countries in this area, in this region, and the various attempts have been made for a transition, in fact, to have democratic elections. The African Union and the appropriate regional organizations are going to help these in order to restore constitutional order in accordance with the principles and the aspirations of the peoples concerned. In the whole of Africa, in Somalia, despite the remarkable efforts by the leadership of President Hassan Mohammed, with the support of the situation still remains fragile. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the problem of development finance of Africa, in fact, is the top of our agenda. I have the pleasure to appreciate the initiative taken by the African Development Bank under the leadership of our brother, Dr. Dina, and the impetus given to financing of migration and regional integration. Indeed, to assert here that is after to assert its ambition of development on this issue. In fact, we need to ensure that there is a reform of international financing institutions. In fact, through the press that has been made with the opening of 22, the African Union, reluctance of including a continent political and international political and financial governance still have a long way to go. Such resistance will concretize our resolve to pursue our fight for more justice for our continent. I express the wish that our deliberation will make new and significant contribution to this decisive struggle, and I thank you for your kind attention.
The important role of the United Nations as the key contributor to an empowered and transformed Africa, in line with the Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda of 2063, I now have the pleasure to invite Her Excellency Madame Amina J, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, to deliver her statement. Your Excellency.
Thank you. Your Excellency, Azali Assoumani, President of the Union of Comoros and Chairperson of the African Union, Your Excellency, William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, are warmly welcoming. Your Excellency, Moussa Faki Mahamat, the Chairperson of the Commission of the African Union, and my brother, Excellencies, women and youth of Africa, distinguished delegates, Asante Sana. It is really a great honor to join you at the mid-year coordination meeting of the African Union, the regional economic communities, regional mechanisms. I want to thank the government of Kenya for the warm welcome home and the African Union for inviting me to share some reflections. This year's meeting provides us with yet again another unique opportunity to consolidate common ground in shaping and implementing Africa's narrative to meet the ambitions of Agenda 2063, aspirations of African people. Excellencies, today our world continues to face unprecedented crises, from the socio-economic impact of COVID-19, a climate emergency, and the knock-on effects of the war in Ukraine. None of us need reminding that Africa played no part in creating any of these challenges. Commitments by the international community, financing to climate action and adequate humanitarian responses have aggravated the obstacles to the effort made by Africa and its leaders to implement Agenda 2063. Meanwhile, we see renewed conflict and extremist terrorism are wreaking havoc across the continent, resulting in decades of development and millions of displaced persons and refugees. These calamities are leaving a generation of our young people, especially women, with the anxiety of a tortured present, a deeply uncertain future. Let me salute you as African leaders. Against this challenging global and continental backdrop, you continue tirelessly, day after day, here and abroad, to make the powerful case for Africa. Africa as the new horizon of possibility and as the source of solutions to its own challenges and those of the planet. Excellencies, you have the United Nations solidarity. In an important demonstration of the important solidarity, the Secretary General continues to call the G20 for meaningful climate action that will end addiction to fossil fuels so that we may address the imperative of a 1.5-degree world. He also continues to call loudly for the SDG stimulus, tackling debt distress and increased fiscal space through the reallocation of additional SDRs to the African Development Bank initiative, and the reform of the current global financial architecture, which is today morally bankrupt. Excellencies, if African solutions to African challenges and opportunities are to be more than a slogan, we must have a strong voice in the G20, defining African innovation and ideas, and also have unified action by African leaders to disrupt the unacceptable status quo. We applaud the strong voices of President Ruto, President Macky Sall, and President Ramaphosa at the recent summit, the new Global Financial Pact in Paris. You're here today to discuss, among other very serious issues, the African Union's reforms, the 10-year plan of Agenda 2063, governance issues, and the work of the regional economic communities and mechanisms. As you do so, you will need to ensure that your cohesiveness and common positions come together to shape the upcoming G20 meeting, the UN General Assembly, and the AG Summit. It will also inform the Climate Action Summit, the commemoration of the UN Declaration of Human Rights at 75, and the World Bank IMF fall meetings on reform, and then the last of the meeting of the year, the Paris climate stocktaking at COP28. The United Nations is committed to accompanying the continent with the framework of Agenda 2030 and informs Agenda 23, but also as you navigate these international waters and through these milestones. Finally, Excellencies, allow me to end with to all of you. As an African woman and a very proud Nigerian, mother of 6 and grandmother of 4, I have an intergenerational stake in Africa. The continent is a moment of reckoning when the world is to take its gaze off Africa. We may appear down, but we are far out. And as our leaders, continue to count on you to forge a path towards delivering the vision for Africa that's enshrined in the 2060 agenda. Excellencies, this will not happen unless we stand united, with no light between you. As we say in Africa, if the wall cracks, the light will enter. And it needs to be determined to live up to the courage of convictions with a sense of urgency. It is this unity that we must draw from on the depths of Africa's turbulent history, but also our shared values and a sense of common purpose. Ultimately, Excellency, it is Africa's very dignity at stake for us and future generations. In the words of late Nkrumah, who inspired Agenda 2063, I quote, "We in Africa, who are pressing now for unity, are deeply conscious of the validity of our purpose. We need the strength of our combined numbers to protect ourselves from the very real dangers of colonization written in disguised forms." Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the women and youth of Africa, thank you for this opportunity, and I wish you constructive and productive meetings. Asante sana.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Madam Deputy Secretary General. I now have the great honor to invite His Excellency Dr. William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, to deliver his statement. Your Excellency.
Thank you much. Your Excellency Azali Assoumani, President of the Union of Comoros and the Chair of Africa Union, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Your Excellency Mr. Faki Mahamat, the Chairman of Africa Union Commission, Your Excellency Issoufou Mahamadou, Champion of the AfCFTA and President of Niger, Your Excellency Amina Mohammed, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, heads of organs and institutions of the Africa Union, regional economic communities and regional mechanisms, honorable ministers, the Honorable Anwar Guru, Chairperson of Council of Governors, the Honorable Johnson Sakaja, the Governor of the City of Nairobi, members of Parliament, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I am greatly honored and delighted to I have a high privilege to have this opportunity to welcome you to the city of Nairobi, to Kenya. The opportunity to host this summit and your visit to our country does tremendous honor to our nation. I welcome all of you, your excellencies, ministers, our friends from across the continent and beyond to Kenya. Let me just give you one or two tips about Kenya. Around the city of Nairobi, a city that has a canopy of very green on one side and also a national park in the city. In the national park, which is maybe 15 minutes from your hotel room, we have wildlife, lions and all manner of wildlife. We have tried to fence, but sometimes, as you know, wild animals, they break away the fence. So if you have time to walk around the city of Nairobi and you meet a lion, please be cool. Because they are wild. We keep them inside. Secondly, let me also welcome you to Nairobi, to Kenya, and to give some information that scientists, and I am one of them, have proven that the earth remains of man are in here. And therefore, those of you who know the history of humankind, this is where humanity began. And so while you are here and you are at home, it is because you truly are at home. So, and I give you my commitment that as the whole of Kenya, we are having a national conversation as to whether we should have a visa for anybody coming home. So next time, next time you come to Nairobi, you might not need a visa. Excellencies, it is difficult to overstate the fundamental importance of this summit and the momentous sequence of the transformative business we have assembled here to transact. You will recall that as a Continental political community, we resolved unanimously to pursue the integral agenda with greater vigor and focus. This commitment underscored by the decision to formulate a suitable framework to effectively coordinate the diverse efforts taken through our 8 regional economic communities and various mechanisms that is part of the ecosystem AU. It is evident from the variety of activity and high efficacy and viability of AU's agenda and the undeniable increase of the AU Commission's administrative capacity and over vigor of the regional and Pan-African integration efforts that the AU's commitment was honest, accompanied by demonstrable political will and a focused and effective implementation strategy. We are a busy continent that is going places. The young, green continent of the future, and we are determined to lead our march into this future as a united, empowered contributor to sustainable solutions for global progress. We are reasoning together, generating effective solutions together, implementing them together, facing our challenges head-on together, making progress and getting results. This is what has Africa's implementation leadership to Nairobi and the subtitle of the agenda of the 5th Media Summit, which is this meeting. For this, I want to celebrate you who are here today, not just for time to be here, but also the work you do every day in making the Pan-African Unity Project. For this is what the integration agenda is about. Whether we are talking about regional economic communities, organisms, or the broader continental effort, the unity of African people is our primary goal. I commend His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, President of the Arab Republic of Egypt, for successfully chairing the State and Government's Orientation Committee, which has effectively steered AUDA-NEPAD in momentous breakthrough in achieving Agenda 2063 aspiration of consolidating regional and continental integration. I also thank President El-Sisi for successfully hosting the AfCOP, or the Implementation COP as it was called, the last conference state parties to the United Nations Convention on Climate Change at Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. In November last year, it was at this COP that Africa firmly revealed to the world a new determination to project a clear, forceful, united voice and claim its opportunity to contribute to resolving humanity's most serious existential threat, that is climate change. I salute with gratitude His Excellency President Bongo Ondimba, President of the Republic of Gabon, in his capacity as the chair of the Economic Community of Central African States, for the progress he has made in stewarding collaboration among regional economic communities under the Inter-Reg Cooperation Initiative. As a result, the ECAS and the Economic Commission of Western Africa states has made significant strides in strengthening maritime security cooperation. I also appreciate the work being by His Excellency President Ismail Omar Guelleh, the President of the Republic of Djibouti, who chairs the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, for his able leadership, IGAD's contribution to the progress towards agreement on the cessation of hostilities in Ethiopia, and now the activities that all undertaking to ensure that Sudan returns to normalcy and takes up its place as a stable, peaceful country in our continent. Further, I am cognizant of the animated activity and excellent work that has brought progress in ongoing projects and initiatives being undertaken across many spheres by the economic community of West African states under the able leadership of His Excellency President Bola Tinubu of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the Common Market of East Africa and Southern Africa led by Excellency Hakainde Hichilema, President of the Republic of Zambia, Southern Africa Development Communities, chaired by His Excellency President Felix Antoine Tshisekedi Tshilombo of the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Community of the Sahel, Saharan states under the stewardship of His Excellency President of Benin, Patrice Talon, the Arab Unit of the Maghreb, led by His Excellency Tayyip Pakouche of Tunisia, and the East African Community under His Excellency President Evariste Ndayishimiye of Burundi. I must also recognize and praise the good and excellent work the AU Commission continues to do under the leadership of its chair, His Excellency Moussa Faki Mahamat. This has been made possible by the able leadership of his team. These AU-REC success stories establish without a doubt that a lot of great work is being done all over our continent, and that in our time, African leadership is signaling urgency, focus, consistency, and determination to sustain, manage, and solve prevailing challenges and develop robust instruments to anticipate and preempt future crises. With such commitment, we now have confidence to pursue sustainable development and shared prosperity, and expect that Agenda 2063 is now firmly on course. The most compelling signal that African integration is unstoppable and that it will open doors for unprecedented socio-economic transition is the progress we have made in implementing the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. We must be proud of this magnificent project and historic achievement by and for ourselves, whose positive effects will reverberate through the world for a long time to come. I am not exaggerating. Let's consider the bare facts of the matter. This single mechanism has inaugurated the world's largest free trade area. Under 54 countries have agreed to create a single market with a population of 1.4 billion people and a GDP of US dollars 3.4 trillion. The free trade area is projected to lift 1 million people out of extreme poverty and boost incomes by 7% or US dollars 400 billion by 2035. As I have had occasion to remark before, where this is the magnitude of what typical Pan-African collective action can achieve, and we are only getting started. The progress we have, the progress we have by collaborating with unprecedented numbers of purpose in different domains, including peace and security, regional integration, investment, trade and development, and climate change, is of tremendous and positive formative significance for us collectively. Agenda 2063 is our blueprint to deliver the Pan-African vision of an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens, representing a dynamic force in the international arena. Therefore, it is more critical now than ever before that we marshal our collective consciousness, willpower, solidarity, and unity to fulfill our fundamental generational weight of introducing Africa as a new global power and able to provide leadership towards a new industrial age that shall simultaneously usher in an era of inclusive development, shared prosperity, and effective climate action. We must therefore capitalize on the institutional reform momentum at the Africa Union to pursue the complete development of active capacity to deliver Pan-African transformation. To do this, self-reliance, ladies and gentlemen, is essential, and a fit-for-purpose institutional architecture is indispensable at the AU. At the moment, 60% of our program budget is financed by us. The demands of our challenging time require an AU that can pursue multiple urgent and critical interventions using internally mobilized resources. The Pan-African movement has always been about sovereignty and agency, first and foremost. Chronic dependence, even well-meaning partners, is certainly inconsistent with the aspiration of independence, sovereignty, agency. And I therefore believe that we take seriously the recommendations that are made towards making our organization an organization that stands on its feet and an organization that is funded by us. This is why we must make progress in exploring, developing, and implementing solutions like the Kigali AU Decision 605 of 16. Similarly, you may want to know that that decision has now been implemented by 17 countries. We need to persuade all our other brothers and sisters in the other countries to come on board so that we can do the responsible thing and fund our own organization. Similarly, time to free up the Africa Union from structural and organizational strains, including duplication and other inefficiencies, thereby facilitating it to be effective on a greater scale. As a point, defining the roles and functions of different organs and instruments clearly is unavoidable. The coordination, administrative, and implementation mandate of the Commission, the legislative and oversight function of a strong Pan-African Parliament, and the political leadership and broad policy direction of the Council, all to be reflected more clearly through rational structural delineation. I hope, prayer, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, that we finally make the right decision and organization that is fit for purpose, that has the requisite finances, the needed voice, and the leadership that can project Africa's position more clearly with a strong voice so that we can take our place in the community of nations. COP27 was a turning point of tremendous magnitude because it brought home to the peoples of Africa the imperative to reconfigure our model of engagement with global and multilateral forces in general, and the urgency of projecting a new place, role, and voice to define Africa's contribution to global development and climate action. As we reflect and deliberate upon President El-Sisi's account of his commendable use of COP27 to facilitate the emergence of fresh Afrocentric perspective to climate change, it is vital that we resolve to do even better and go much further at the forthcoming 28 by taking on a more robust position and proposing a transformed and inclusive global approach to tackle the climate change crisis. This is why it is important for us to pay special attention to the Africa Climate Summit, the first ever in our continent under the AU, which will take place here in Nairobi between September 4th and 6th. The summit, coming after the Paris summit where great clarity emerged, will be a critical opportunity for us to accelerate global energy transition and deliver African solutions to the 28 in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. We return to Nairobi in September. Therefore, our sole business is to mobilize and converge around a common position and advocate global alignment on a green agenda complemented by a transformative global climate finance compact. Your participation in this summit might therefore anticipate your stronger participation in the Africa Climate Summit. And ladies and gentlemen, as we come to that summit, there are two very important things that as a continent we must harmonize, consolidate, and package our collective position. We must have a collective position on matters to do with debt and liquidity. We must all agree that it's time for a new financing mechanism. The reform of the multilateral development banks is no longer about if, it is when that is going to happen, so that we eliminate the current structure that is unfair to the majority of the people in Global South and especially in our African continent. None other than the UN Secretary General himself has said that our continent pays anywhere up to eight times more than our brothers and sisters were due. It is only fair that we have a finance mechanism that treats everybody equally. All of us have read about the animal farm, where there are some that are more equal than us. position is that we don't live in the animal farm, that we treat each other and others are treated by a financial system equally. And all we are asking, we are not asking for one financial system that favors us. No, we are asking for a financial system that is fair for everybody. Part of the challenges we have of liquidity, part of the challenges we have debt distress is actually caused by an unfair financial architecture that makes us pay interest more than others. Today, we have a debt stock of $640 billion Africans, paying close to $70 billion every year. If we had a fair financial architecture that everybody fairly and does not profile Africa as risky, we would be paying less than half what we are paying today in debt repayments. So I'm simply asking that we have a conversation, a good conversation on having a better financial system, and that's why the reform of the multilateral development banks is an urgent necessity. And secondly, that we were left behind in the fossil fuel energy industrial development. In his own wisdom, put Africa at the center. We have climate change as an existential crisis to humanity. But also, we have green energy, which we have renewable energy, which we have in plenty, as a development imperative able to go into the future. That's us at the center of the solution of the crisis of climate change. And that is a conversation we will come and have in Nairobi, because Africa, apart from having the greatest stock of renewable energy, we have other assets, minerals, that we have the largest reserves globally that can be used for green energy development. We have the largest reserve of uncultivated arable land that can drive, according to Sina, my brother, we can increase grain in our globally by up to 100%, maybe even 200%. We have the youngest population, the youngest global workforce in our continent. Ladies and gentlemen, we have what it takes to provide a solution for decarbonization, taking the world into green industrialization, and also ensuring we decarbonize everywhere. So those are the two things that we must focus attention and be able to position the continent appropriately. And that's why I say that we need a fit-for-purpose organization, and we need to fund the organization ourselves. You all know it is said, he who is the piper calls the tune. When you return to Nairobi, therefore, in September, our sole business will be to mobilize and converge our common position and advocate for global alignment, as I've said, that puts Africa at the center. I take this opportunity to once more appreciate the indispensable contribution made by the AU Commission and the leadership of its chair to all arrangements and the logistical undertaking required to prepare a successful summit. It is because of partnership with the Commission that we made progress in laying ground for an event that will give our continent a platform from which to launch its agenda into global discourse. I am confident that the summit will be successful, achieving all its objectives. I wish all of us wonderful deliberation as we receive the various reports in time in Kenya, and God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Mr. President, for the statement. And now it's my distinct honor and pleasure to invite His Excellency, Mr. Azali Assoumani, President of the Union of Comoros and Chairperson of the African Union, to deliver his statement.
Monsieur Ruto,
Excellency Dr. Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, my dear colleagues, heads of state and of government, Excellency Chairperson of the African Union, Moussa Faki Mahamat, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Amina Mohammed, Excellencies, Ministers, Excellencies, the Chief Executives of Regional Economic Mechanisms and Regional Economic Communities and Regional Mechanisms, Excellencies, Honorable Assalamu alaikum. The midway, halfway through the mandate entrusted to me on October 18 in Addis Ababa, we are gathered here today in this beautiful capital of Nairobi for the 5th mid-year annual coordination meeting of the African Union. I would like to begin by expressing my sincere thanks to our brother, Ruto, who I call my brother in my language, and his government, and as well as the peoples of Kenya for the very warm welcome extended to us, and to express to him on your behalf and on our own our deep gratitude. Asante sana Mheshimiwa na Raisi, Your Excellency. Dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, at a time when the world is in the throes of technological change, Africa, our continent, is prey to the scourges of division and bloody conflict that throw whole swaths of society into destitution, isolation. In this context, therefore, I would like to express here our total solidarity with our sister countries which are going through this crisis situation, and at the same time renew our call to balancing the guns for a frank and sincere dialogue between the various protagonists. It is through dialogue that we will succeed in ascending our differences and in removing the obstacles that stand in the way of our progress towards an Africa that's integrated, prosperous, and peaceful that we all earnestly desire. Since our February summit in Addis Ababa, and deeply convinced that peace and security are the driving force behind our development strategies and programs, indeed, I have, in consultation with President Moussa Faki, my brother, initiated contacts with the main players in the Sudan crisis with a view to finding a peaceful way and to support all initiative in order to arrive at a full solution. This fratricidal conflict has not only led to the loss of lives, but has also driven thousands of people into exile. It is with the same concern also that I have dispatched an emissary to Mali and to Burkina Faso to inquire about the state of progress of transition process in sister countries. I dare to hope that the holding of the constitutional referendum in Mali will be a first step towards a transparent, inclusive, and peaceful elections. Also, I visited Guinea-Conakry, where I conveyed the African Union's message of peaceful transition, culminating in a rapid return to constitutional order through open, free, and fair elections. The quadripartite meeting held on June 27th in Angola on the crisis in the east of DRC under the aegis of the African Union, in which I took part, is part of this desire to contribute to resolving this conflict. It has already lasted more than 2 decades. It is destabilizing the region and the whole of Africa. We also undertook a peace mission to Kyiv and St. Petersburg. A report of will be presented to you later today. In this globalized world, no country, however large or powerful, can claim to be immune to war or its consequences. Ladies and gentlemen, on the multilateral front, following the footsteps of my predecessor, my brother, President Macky Sall, I continued our advocacy at the G7 summit in Hiroshima, calling for Africa's place in the United Nations Security Council as a permanent member, as well as our membership of the G20. Nor did I fail to raise the question of debt and energy, 2 major issues that seriously handle the development of our continent. Throughout this journey, I've also been able to count on the invaluable collaboration of the chairman of the African Union Commission, our brother Moussa Faki Mahamat, and his teams, as well as on the support of the members of the Conference Bureau. I'd like to DRC, I'd like to extend my greetings to the DRC. I'd like to express my sincere thanks to them all. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the acceleration of the Continental Africa Free Trade CTA, our significant progress over the past 6 months have confirmed once again and our conviction this continental common market is an opportunity to achieve the Pan-African vision of an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa. Currently, the achievements include, among others, the establishment of an adjustment fund to Afrexim Bank, already utilized at $1 billion for the benefit of AfCFTA. The establishment of a trade initiative in October 2022 has enabled the AfCFTA to adhere to this initiative. The operationalization of peace and the settling of payments, which facilitate intra-Africa payments in African currency, will then reduce the cost of currency transfers. As you can see, these are concrete actions that provide real grounds for hope, which is why I invite those member states that have not yet ratified and deposited their instrument ratification so as soon as possible. The achievement of our objectives are set out in Agenda 2063. This depends on that. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, from June 12th to 14th, a ministerial conference on blue economy and climate action was held in the Union of Comoros, attended by several ministers and the following institutions: the African Union Commission, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, the European Union, International Union for Conservation of Nature, UNDP, and the Indian Ocean Commission. The conference was in accordance with the theme of the, namely, the acceleration of the AfCFTA. In fact, intra-Africa is mainly carried out by road and sea. Therefore, it has now been established that the implementation of the AfCFTA could double the sea freight from 58 to 131.5 million tons. As a result, the development of the sea transport appears as one of the key factors for the success of Africa's economic integration. Africa's island states, despite their structural fragility, are brimming with opportunity and potential. Again, the vastness of their maritime space, which is why the Moroni Declaration, the outcome of the Ministerial Conference, through the relevance of its recommendation, should constitute our roadmap in this area. With regard to institutional reform decided upon in 2016 by the Assembly of Heads of State and Government to breathe new life into the African Union, we welcome the remarkable work carried out by the team of experts led by Professor Pierre Mukoko Mbonjo, who will share the main conclusions with us during this summit. The press by media coordination meeting, for example, and the reduction number of commissioners are among the concrete results of this reform. Its aim is to enable us to evaluate, rationalize, and plan our various projects and programs in order to achieve genuine African integration. As regards the theme chosen for 2024, in this case, education, I'd like to salute the pertinent relevance of the choice made by organization. As Nelson Mandela once said, education is the most powerful weapon for changing the world. The numbers for education, figures for education in Africa are rising. It has been established that Africa needs 17 million adult teachers to achieve universal primary and secondary education by 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, it is unacceptable that in this age of new information technologies and artificial intelligence, there are still entire regions of Africa with access to basic education. The challenge is enormous, but I'm counting on your collective intelligence to achieve concrete results and to reserve the current trends. In this ever-increasingly turbulent world, we need to close ranks more than ever and to be able to face up to the challenges that are growing with each past day. It's only together, driven by what we must both be, which is our motto, African solutions to African problems, that we live in Africa that is reconciled with self, prosperous, and open to the world. Strongly motivated by these principles, I am confident that Africa and our Pan-African organization will be able to meet the challenges of our upcoming agendas, notably the Russia-Africa Summit, Nairobi Summit on Climate Change, the 20 in India, and the COP28 in the United Arab Emirates. On this hopeful note, that I declare open the 5th media coordination meeting of our organization. I thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I wish now to invite all Excellencies, heads of states, heads of delegations, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, the United Nations Deputy Secretary General, the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, the heads of regional economic committees and regional mechanisms for the official group family photo of this thing. The official photo will be taken at the stairs as we exit this conference room. Your senses, you will be guided by our protocol and security team. After the photo, the meeting will resume in closed session in this same conference hall. I thank you, all of you.
The African air transport market, January 20, as the first project of Agenda 26. As a step, we launched the single air transport market, January 28, the first project of Agenda 2063.
Until a few years ago, almost every time you wanted to fly from one side of Africa to the other, you would have to go via Europe.
This will give a huge opportunity to passengers, but also to the entire continent. As we know, many sectors are really interlinked with civil aviation, but also business in general.
if air transport were to be liberalized amongst them, an additional 155,000 jobs will be created, 1.3 billion will be added to the GDPs of 12 countries, and it will make travel much more easy, cost-effective, and competitive.
Imagine a continent filled with limitless possibilities, where every African can realize their full potential. With the implementation of the continent-wide transformative flagship project of Agenda 2063, we can achieve this goal. An integrated high-speed train network that connects African countries so that we can travel and transport goods with ease across the continent. A continental strategy for Africa's commodities that ensures a collaborative process in developing and managing the continent's natural resources for all Africans. The world's largest trading zone in the African Continental Free Trade Area, which promotes trade within Africa and with the world. The African passport and the removal of restrictions through the free movement of persons, allowing Africans to travel, work, conduct business and live anywhere within their continent. A peaceful Africa where all guns are silenced. The Grand Inga Dam project will provide affordable and clean electricity. Improved and affordable air travel through a single African air transport market, SAATM, that connects African cities. An annual African Economic Forum that brings together great African minds to develop strategies to harness the continent's vast resources to the benefit of Africans. The establishment of the African financial institutions that promote economic integration and the transparent mobilization of resources to promote economic development. The Great African Museum will preserve and promote our cultural heritage and celebrate Africa's influence on the cultures of the world. Promoting cybersecurity that protects our data so there is safety online and ensures that emerging technologies are used for the benefit of Africans. An African virtual and e-university that provides access to the highest quality tertiary and continuing education to Africans anywhere in the world. A Pan-African e-network for innovative e-applications and services that will transform Africa into an e-society. An African outer space strategy that bolsters economic development across all sectors and positions Africa as a regional market for space products and services. And the Encyclopedia Africana, which will document and celebrate Africa's history, culture, and the contributions of African people throughout the world. Let us unite to build the Africa we want. Visit www.au.int to learn more about Agenda 2063.